Hello, hello, New York. Welcome back. Yes. Thank you, everyone that is here. Welcome back to the New York Region's Career Panel. I am your host, Brian Martinez. We have three trailblazing leaders joining us today. If we may all please welcome Jimmie Rush, Emily Hudson, and JD Smith. Yeah. All right. So I would like to thank everyone that was able to join us today. For those who were unable to join, we will be sharing our career panel series November 26th on YouTube and throughout our social media frequencies. If our fellow Phi Theta Kappa members may please shout out their chapter in the chat and update their Zoom names with their chapter, that will be great. That way we can identify you for the raffles that we will be having. So we're going to have a short intermission and during our closing when we'll be hosting those raffles. And if our guests may please introduce themselves. You could please just unmute and we could begin the show.
Hello. My name is JD Smith. I graduated from Mohawk Valley Community College in 2006 with my associates in culinary arts management. I worked in local restaurants for the last 20 years, but 15 into it, I decided that I'd like to open for myself. And I met my partner working at a coveted restaurant down the street called Taylor and the Cook. We met there and we became close friends. We decided to open Mōtus. So here we are 4.5 years later. We did it. I can't believe we did it. We're still there. You know, it's still rather surreal.
Awesome. Welcome, JD.
My name is Emily Hudson. I work for the Arc Oneida-Lewis Chapter. I work as a recruitment specialist. I graduated from Utica College and I went on to Cornell for my master's in human resource management and found my love in talent acquisition. And I pride myself on hiring for Oneida and Lewis County.
Hey, welcome on over, Emily.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmie Rush. I graduated from Mohawk Valley Community College in 2013, and then I got my bachelor's at Clarkson University in aeronautical and mechanical engineering. Further on, I went and got my master's at University of Connecticut in mechanical engineering, and currently I'm working at General Dynamics Electric Boat, which manufactures submarines for the Navy.
Nice. That's awesome. Thank you guys for introducing yourselves and welcome. This is awesome. You know, like I can't wait to hear from all three of you. So now for our first question that I have for you guys, what drew you into your field? What was it that got you excited?
Well, at first, when I was a young cook, I'd say 15 years old, I was working in some local restaurants, and I was I'd start in the dish pit. And I'd look over and I'd see the cooks back there. It didn't matter to me what they were cooking then. You know, could have been just a New York strip steak with a baked potato, but it just looked like such a rush back there. And I had to get back there. And that was my first taste of the adrenaline rush of working the line in a restaurant. So my heart's always been in local, small, especially family-owned restaurants. But in this case, it kind of mutated into a vision of my own, and that's where I'm at today. That's what gave me the drive to want to continue to do this. Gosh.
That's awesome. How about you, Jimmie or Emily? What was it that got you excited about the field that you're in?
Well, engineering I always thought was pretty cool, and I didn't originally think I was gonna be working for like submarines or anything like that. I always liked space, but the way careers do normally go is you want one thing and you end up getting something else. But I figured submarines is close enough and cool enough that it worked out. But engineering, I kind of always wanted to do engineering since like probably middle school. I always thought like building things like that was cool and kind of designing stuff. and I ended up here.
Sweet.
I can also speak to the fact that I went to college for something else and I thought I was going to be in a whole different career field. And here I am in talent acquisition. I still use my psychology degree almost every single day of my life, whether that's in work or outside of work. But what drew me to talent acquisition was I love conversing. I love having conversations. I like being able to know people. And what better way than to interview somebody for a position? And I get paid to talk to strangers all day long, where my mom used to yell at me to talk to strangers when I was younger. So I think that's a win-win.
I can totally agree with you. That's like what I mentioned in our last panel, that as a talent acquisitionist, that's almost like doing fantasy football. You know, you're setting up your team, you're setting up that organization's team. So that's definitely cool. So thank you guys for your input on that. For our next question that we have today is, considering all the people that you've met in your field, what personal attributes have you found essential for success?
Willingness to adapt to any changes.
Sweet. Jimmie or JD, would you like to add on top of that?
Especially in this field that I'm in, the ability to accept criticism. Especially, you know, it's not easy being able to deal with, say you get a negative review or something that's out of your power. You can't let that destroy you. You know, that's always been something that we look for, is the ability to be able to take that criticism and improve on what you're doing.
For us, I think it's quite a bit about being able to talk to other people and get their input and stuff. Because in engineering, there's no way you're going to know everything that there is to know about something, and you're always trying to figure things out. So being able to get input and be able to communicate effectively with other people is very, very important.
That's definitely, you know, one of the main attributes, communication, because how could you have a team member that can't communicate? You know, even when it's an emergency or something, communication is totally key. So would any of our guests here today like to ask a question to our panelists? If you do have a question, you could either unmute your mic, you could turn on your camera, or you could submit your question right in the chat. Yes, Christopher, please.
Hello, I just wanted to ask a question for Jimmie. Jimmie, did you know right away you wanted to go towards mechanical engineering, or did you consider any other areas?
So when I first started, I always thought space stuff was cool. So my major at Clarkson was just pure aeronautical, but then I realized the job market for pure aeronautical was not the best. So I expanded it and hopped over to a dual major in mechanical and aeronautical, just to have that extra mechanical listing on my resume, to kind of expand it and kind of open up job opportunities. But for mechanical and aeronautical itself, both very closely related, I sort of always thought mechanical was cool because I always liked moving stuff. And it turns out quite a bit of broadness in that degree is helpful for looking for jobs.
Sweet. That's definitely, you know, that's interesting. That's so cool. You know, it's like you did say that you had an affinity for, you know, space, and submarines is almost like the water spaceship. Check that out. So let's continue. So my guest, what do you know now that you wish you knew during your time at school?
Everything that I learned about being in this business, my mother warned me about. But she said, you're going to miss some holidays. She said, you're going to miss some weekends. But what I didn't really think about is that she said some, not all. And I miss, you know, I work every weekend. My weekends are like Mondays, you know, that's when I you know, do my family stuff. But I would say I didn't know that the hours were going to be as intense. Luckily, I was able to adapt to it and it's a labor of love, obviously. So what I didn't realize that is, at first that it's not a 40-hour week job, so even that, not that that would have changed anything about my career or what I do or my major at MV. It's just something I would have studied how to manage better, personal life, work life, stuff like that.
Interesting. And Jimmie and Emily, would you like to add on top of that?
Yeah, I think definitely, time management is something great that you need in your career and in your personal life. I think for me, I kind of wish that I would have known not to take everything so hard and so personable. Just because somebody says something to you doesn't mean that it's a direct reflection of you. It could just be how they're feeling that day. And if I get that email that comes across my desk and I'm just fuming from it, I'm still learning not to let that carry into my day and to carry into my next conversation that I have with a candidate.
I think going into engineering, I wish I sort of known that depending on what you do early in your career kind of shapes quite a bit on what you end up doing later in your career. So because I'm now doing a lot of structural stuff, my resume is going to be shaped if I want to go to switch careers later or look at other positions. I'm more kind of boxed into what I'm doing now. So having a better idea of sort of what you want to go and try to steer what you want to do to kind of your initial positions kind of helps a lot and gives you something you want to do more so, even though it's pretty hard to tell exactly what you're going to end up doing when you first start, because the field's so broad that the projects that you work on might not be exactly what your job description ends up being.
Interesting. That's definitely something important because for me, I'm a nurse, and like you said, it's like you kind of get boxed in. So if I was to have like a decision change, if I wanted to do something else, it would be a lot more extra work. You kind of get boxed into like, all right, I guess I have to stick on this route. So when you probably have other loves, that's definitely interesting. And so what is rewarding and frustrating about working in your fields? Like, how do you work around that?
Rewarding for me, the most, I would say, is the gratification that and the satisfaction that our guests are giving us 5 stars, and they really, really enjoyed themselves. And we made an impact on their, everybody has their culinary repertoire that they go to their favorite restaurant, and they have these different experiences that they've had with food over their last 30 years. And they remember nostalgically, if that's a word, that they experience these flavors and things. And that's the most gratifying thing to me, is I'm able to give somebody that different sense as a memory, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and that resides deep in people for a long time. And that's something that I really enjoy about doing what I do. Things that are frustrating, I would say, especially over the last couple of years, is it's always a gamble. When you do an a la carte menu, it's a gamble to offer 15 items, because how do you plan for 15 items? You have to say, 50% of people are going to go for the filet mignon, and the other is going to be broken down X, Y, and Z. But you don't really know that. You can just go by past data, and that usually proves to be not always as reliable when you're changing your menu as much as we do. We continuously change it week after week. So not knowing what to serve people, which is easier in a banquet hall when you're going to serve 100 fillets or something. So you're prepping for what you don't know you're going to serve.
Interesting. That's definitely, inventory. It's hard because, like you said, COVID hit, and you probably had so much inventory expecting to have people come in, and it's like, it puts you in a hole. So Emily or Jimmy, what do you find like rewarding or frustrating about your field, and how do you work around that?
Yeah. So rewarding. We work with individuals who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, and the people we support are just amazing. Every day that I get to come into work and hire for them is a privilege. And when I get to call them and say, hey, I have a staff who's going to be working for you, they get to take you out where you want to go this weekend. Where are you going to go? And they're like, I'm going to go to a Comets game. I'm like, that's so awesome. I hope you have a great time. You have that staff to do that. That really is very rewarding for me on that end. Also, I love offering people jobs. When I get to call somebody and say, hey, congrats, you got it. It just makes my day. I sent out 6 offer letters today, and it just fulfills me so much and makes me so happy that I was able to, have that impact on somebody's life. And usually it's a good impact. So that's good. As far as difficult or frustrating, this pandemic has not been easy. I know a lot of my recruiter friends and all different types of industry, from restaurants to even aerotech and space and government. It's been very tough to find candidates who want to do the work that you have. I think that this pandemic opened everybody's eyes and made them really internalize what they want to do and even change their own career path. And just making sure that, I have a proper candidate flow and that I'm able to have conversations to get people roles is good. But also it is a gamble in our industry, just as JD had said, because, we have such a large population that we work with that is so specialized, and not everybody wants to do it, or we have a couple other affiliates that are also hiring for the same jobs as we have. So this one candidate isn't interviewing just with us alone. They're interviewing with 4 other companies. So I need to make sure that I'm getting them that job offer first. I'm giving them that A1 experience. I'm making sure that they feel supported and that they know that they can have a career and grow at the Arc. So that's probably one of the bigger challenges that I've been solving through this pandemic.
Interesting. How about you, Jimmy?
Well, as for gratifying, working on something that ends up being a final product that actually gets made and produced and people are going to use for the next 40, 50 years kind of thing is always gratifying. And seeing something like, oh yeah, there's my signature on that thing that I made 40 years ago, or in this case, 6 years ago or whatever, that's being produced now, is always gratifying to know that like I had a little part in this thing that actually gets made. But for frustrating, I think with my job, being in engineering, you think, oh, it's all technical stuff. It's a lot of math and numbers and everything. But most of my job these days is writing and editing and producing calculations and reports and things like that. So pages and pages of editing and writing and proofreading and going over other people's stuff and doing the exact same thing. So having to do all that extra like editorial and kind of grammatical and that kind of stuff that you really wouldn't think was originally associated with the career and that you do is a little bit frustrating, especially when like other people critique your stuff and you have to like, you use the wrong past participle there in this calculation for this one paragraph of your report, and you have to fix that. And like, all right, I got you.
That's sweet. We did receive a question from one of our guests. They did ask, what advice would you give someone graduating from college and entering the workforce who doesn't really know what they want to do?
Do it all. Have, talks with recruiters. Every job that you see that, you meet those basic qualifications for, or even if you don't meet them, apply, have a conversation, go to job fairs, make those connections with your past colleagues, research companies. Think of something that you use every day. I use my iPhone every day. I'm going to go look what jobs Apple has. just kind of see where you can fall there, and then pick up on your own aspirations and look at what you want to do in your life. And if you find a career that you love, it's not really work, right? That's what they say.
That's right. That is exactly what they say. How about JD or Jimmy? What would you advise someone, just getting out of school unsure?
I would just piggyback off of what she said, like do as much as possible. Do as many things as, go on vacations. You can rack up a little bit of debt, not a whole lot, but you could just go to different places and travel and experience as many things as possible before you, a lot of people decide what they want to do, what's going to make them happy a little bit later in life too. So it's not the end of the world, if you make the wrong decision. I don't regret a single thing, but what I would piggyback is just say do as much as possible and experience as much as possible before you make that big leap.
Interesting. Definitely experience, because I was even thinking of that as in a way of, if you get a degree and you're not in love with it, Emily did say, just apply, have that conversation, make that connection where it could lead you on to something new, a door that you never expected of a new world. So that's definitely interesting. Thank you, guys. So another question that I have for you folks is, how has the world of work changed in the past 5 years? What do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
For me, at least, it's been the dramatic decrease of the labor pool in my field over the last 5 years. What I've noticed is a lot of people are pretty tough on restaurants. Not what was me type thing. We're happy and we're not held back by any means. But what has happened is we've lost a huge labor pool, and I don't blame them, to be honest with you. Half of them, they lost their faith in the restaurant industry because what was the first to go, or maybe the second to go, what was considered or deemed non-essential during certain really difficult times, when that has to be abided by, and it has to be something that we follow. They lost faith that their career or their line of business that they devoted their life to thus far was deemed kind of non-essential. So people ran for the hills from the restaurant industry. There were people that chefs that continued, and front of the house professionals as well. They learned that they can go do anything. They can leave this business because a lot of other people have done the same thing as well, and they'll follow their passions, like I said earlier, a little bit later in life if they need to. But that's what's happened for us, at least over the last 5 years. Was there a second part of your question?
What do you predict will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that's gonna there was a period of time before COVID that being a chef was, and I hated this time, at least at the time. I think back on it now and I romanticize it a little bit, but there was a time that that being a chef was kind of a fashion show, and it was kind of glamorous, and it was something that people wanted to do and spend time perfecting because it felt cool. It felt awesome. And I think that's going to happen again, whether it be, chefs with tattoos and tweezers doing that, the gourmet $30 burger type thing, or, or a different type of cuisine will rise. But I think it's going to get better, and we're going to see an influx of culinary professionals, I think.
Sweet. How about you, Emily or Jimmy? How has your field of work changed in the past 5 years, and what do you predict is to come in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so in our field, I can speak for the past 3, because I've been only in this field for about 3 years, but we have seen a change from we used to have a lot of people who came into us and were like, oh, my brother has a disability, I can do this, or I can't do this job. To I have a lot of people who are like, I think I can do this. You were essential throughout COVID. And I think that's one really great thing that helped us throughout the pandemic. I'm sorry it didn't work out for JD too well, but I know you guys are doing great over there. And I've had excellent meals. So I'm always happy whenever I come to Mōtus. But yeah, it's had a lot of people shift into, you know, that essential work and that they want that stable career, and knowing that just because, you know, there was a global pandemic doesn't mean that they can't provide for their family anymore. I also see a lot more remote work happening in the future. I've had a couple people who have been like, do you mind if we have a Skype interview? And I'm like, sure. I mean, I got to have you come in person anyway to complete some paperwork. We can do a Skype interview. I think it's going to shift to a lot more remote work in a lot of different settings. So that's where I foresee for the future.
Interesting. How about you, Jimmie?
Well, in the last 5 years, sort of like hopping on the remote work a little bit, being in the industry that I am, especially in the at the company that I work for, the idea of remote work was pretty much impossible like 2 years ago. Like there almost no one worked remotely, but now because of COVID, I work from home remotely almost full time due to the circumstances of the company, just how many people actually work there, because it's a very, very large company. And with that many people, you can't really have that many people in the building anymore. So they switched, and they switched pretty fast too, which was impressive, at least faster than we thought. So now people have the ability for remote work, and in the next 5-10 years, having that ability and additional remote work, there's a lot more places for people to go if they want to. You can get a job in California and work remotely versus just having to stay where you are. So a lot more people are leaving companies and jumping ship, which is good, and lets you find your place that you want to work for. And yeah, I see, like, just because of COVID kind of jump starting the extra remote industry, it lets people have a larger talent pool and a larger pool of companies that they potentially want to work for.
Interesting. That's definitely, like, that's awesome, you know, because imagine just being able to travel while you could work, you know, you work your regular shift. And because I have one of my close friends, he's a senior for Nike, and man, he was in Mexico for 3 months, and meanwhile his main office is in Portland. So that's definitely interesting how you don't have to be in the same state to find an awesome opportunity like in the future. Wow, that's like mind blown. But so now we are going to move on to our raffle now. So for our members, we are going to have the Wonder Wheel. So we're going to have one lucky winner, and then at the closing, we're going to have another one. And whoever does win, just please message Liz your email, and we'll keep in touch. Hey, congratulations, Kamisha. So you are the grand winner to a wonderful PTK swag t-shirt. So take yourself on to the ptk.org website, pick out your favorite shirt, maybe your best threads for this upcoming winter, and you just let us know your size and we'll send it to you. Thank you so much, Kamisha. And moving on to our second half of our event, are there any guests that would like to ask a question? If you like, please submit it into the chat, or you know, you can just turn your mic right on. Yes, please, Christopher.
Thank you. This is another question for Jimmie. So you mentioned being kind of like boxed in when you're trying to look out just for new job opportunities. I mean, in the area of mechanical engineering, where there's like, it's kind of broad, where there's aerospace, automotive and such things. Do you think once you get in a certain area of that part of mechanical engineering, let's say like automotive, you're kind of limited with new job opportunities, like in another space of mechanical engineering?
So when I say that, it's probably because I work on something very specific. I do a lot of finite element analysis, and I've been doing that for 5 years or so. So all my experience on my resume is going to be related to doing finite element analysis. And if I apply for new jobs and other companies are going to look for experience, they're going to see that I have done that. So they're going to try to put me into jobs that kind of steer me towards what I already have experience in. So that kind of guides a little bit to what you can do. It's not saying you can't get out of that box. It just kind of, when companies are looking for someone, they're looking for a lot of experience. And from what you've already done and continue working on that kind of thing, it kind of it opens up positions at other companies doing that same type of work. And that can be in a different industry, such as like if I jump to automotive, I could be doing finite element analysis in automotive industry, but it's still the same type of work, just in a different product.
Sweet. So I did have another question submitted. So what do people most get wrong about your industry?
I think it's what we do. We're so broad at ARCs, and they're all separated by counties. So there's an ARC of New York State, and in each separate county, there is an ARC in your county and in your city. So we serve Rome, Utica, Clinton, New Hartford, all the way to Barneveld, Lowville, Carthage is kind of what we serve as an agency. And I see that a lot of people will see my program manager job and they'll think that they're going to be working for the government in a program manager role. And I'm like, actually, that is a role where you are working in a home and you are working directly with the people we support, but you are overseeing the entire home function itself. So I just think that people see job titles and they just equate them with something that another company has. And then they don't fully understand that scope. But we also have our own IT department, our own finance department, our own human resources department. So we have a bunch of other careers that aren't working directly with the people we support, but indirectly with them.
Awesome. JD or Jimmy, is there anything that you would want to add on top of that? What's something that people get wrong about your industry, or what's something that you were like, oh crap, it's not really like that?
We touched on a little bit earlier, but I'd say it'd be a common misconception for people to say that it's easy, but as a broad statement about generalized restaurant work, that it would be easy, but as a restaurant owner, that when you pursue your dream, you're not going to just be, making cookies and cooking on the line. You're going to be doing a lot of other things. You'll have to disassemble an ice machine and reassemble it. You'll have to be able to do accounting, and you'll have to be able to manage a lot of different facets of running a business on top of what you would normally do as a chef or as a typical restaurant owner. But there's certain additional things that people don't understand that have to go into it.
Sweet. Definitely. Like I know that we definitely did cover on that part about about what people do get wrong. And also for Jimmy, that I wanted to know, what's something that was different that you were like, yeah, I didn't expect this when entering your industry?
Like when you're in school for engineering, you do so much math and so much science, and you get memorize and you have formula sheets and everything. Going into engineering, I do so much less math and hard science than I would in school. Because now if we don't know something, we just look up in a book already that we have. I think in school, like you sort of get a feel for like, all right, I have to derive this huge equation. And now it's like, all right, I'm just going to go, what huge equation do I need? I don't need to figure that out. I kind of look at all the tools I have and figure out, all right, this guy did this already and this guy did this already. I'll just put them together, and you just kind of you piece part stuff that you have instead of doing so much extra math and that you normally in school.
Awesome. That's almost like my chemistry class. We're learning about these intermolecular forces and stuff, and I'm like, I can't wait to tell my patients about all the ions and interactions that are in their IV. So also, like, to build on that as well, what's the best career advice you feel that you ever received?
One of the first jobs I ever had, I worked for this an old Italian man who spent countless hours in the kitchen making sauces and you know, they doing his prep at 5 a.m. You know, it'd be the middle of winter. He'd have all the windows open, and he'd be sitting there in a tank top making all his sauces in the morning. He did all the work for the restaurant, and that was one of those things, like, I didn't realize how much he did. But I asked him, I said, how do you manage that? Like, you go to bed at like midnight after the restaurant closes, you get up at like 4 or 5 a.m, do all the to do the prep. And he said, it's not really work. You know, it's not he's just living, he's just farming the land. And if you find a way to farm the land and be happy, then you'll, like, as Emily said earlier, you'll never work another day in your life. So that's kind of something that I've pursued, to stop counting the hours, to stop counting how much you do, and cataloging everything that you do, and like, you create this mental portfolio of what he said to let go of that, essentially. And he was one of the happiest men I've ever met. So he's still around. If anybody knows about it, the place is called the Black Stallion. His name is Sal Bulo, and and that was one of my first restaurants I worked at. I was a dishwasher. That's kind of what got me into cooking.
Sweet. How about you, Jimmie or Emily? What's the best advice that you feel like you received? And you know, sometimes you receive some advice and it's like, damn, I wish I would have known that when this happened.
I think one of the best things I was ever taught, and it was actually by one of my college professors, he told me to align my own mission in my own life with my employers. So when I found the Arc, and I've always wanted to work with this population, I just never knew how I could. And I've always wanted to help people. And this is how I can do that. This is how I can foster that own wholeness in me. So at the end of the day, when I close my computer, when I turn off my phone, I know I did a great job. I know I was able to do this. I was able to accomplish this, and I feel fulfilled in my own life, so that my cup is always full and my cup's never empty. Because, as you know, you can't fill a cup if yours is empty. So you always have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and that you're aligning your own personal goals with what you want to put out in the world.
Interesting. Definitely aligning your mission. That was a interesting thought, in a way of when you're searching for your career, align your mission. That's definitely, could agree with that. Thank you. How about you, Jimmie? What's some real valuable advice that you received that you were like, this is good?
I think, at least in my career, the best thing someone's told me was, don't worry about asking for help, because no one's going to know everything. I think I touched on this a little before, but all your coworkers and all your colleagues are wealths of information, and they know tips and tricks and things that you probably wouldn't think of right away, or you don't have the experience and knowledge to know that. I work with engineers way more experienced and knowledgeable than me that have been working at the same company for years and years and years. And all the extra experience, you're not going to have it because you haven't been there that long. So don't be afraid to ask someone more senior than you if you need help, or you can't figure out how to do something, or if there's a better way to do something that you haven't figured out yourself, because all the work we do is kind of, even if little projects are independent, they're all going into a system that's has to work together. So for the same thing, this everyone does sort of a similar job in depending on what department you're in, but they've been doing this much longer than you have. So feel free to ask them anything.
I could totally 100% agree with, ask for help and don't be shy to ask for help, because sometimes people are happy to help. People like to help. They like to share that knowledge and what they know. That gets exciting. It makes work not boring. So this is a kind of a, I wonder about this. How do you separate your feelings and emotions from difficult decisions? Like, say if you had to let someone go, you like the guy, but how do you, or say like, how do you separate your emotions from a difficult decision that you really have to do? Is it like Nike, just do it? Like,
In my case, I kind of have to. In certain occasions, if I can't just let somebody, if I have, piggybacking off of your example, if I have to let somebody go, which I'm typically not one for confrontation or, and for example, everybody that works for me is a close friend of mine. So it's always tough. And people say, they say, don't do that. They don't hire your friends or don't work with your friends, but I'd rather be surrounded by people that I know and love all the time, especially if I'm going to be here constantly like that. But what I would say is, an uncomfortable situation like that, how to separate my feelings from that is to realize that if I don't, then I could possibly fail, at which point nobody would have a job. So I have to remain level-headed and obviously reasonable and respectful to everyone, but there are those certain occasions where I have to consider the place as an organism or an entity of its own that that could be fractured by, something like that if I wasn't able to let someone go or I don't know, like that.
no, I could definitely agree. Say someone that's new in a management position, it's like, damn, how do I say that? Have you guys ever seen Moneyball, the baseball movie? It's really good. And when he had to tell Jonah Hill he had to fire a baseball player. He said, just get to it, just do it, just short and sweet, because as you get to be an adult, you don't want the fluff. Just keep it short and sweet. No, thank you. Jimmie or Emily, would you like to add on that or?
Yeah. So I don't really do too much firing. I only do the hiring. I leave the firing for my supervisor to do. Not my forte. I've done it at another company. I don't enjoy it. It's never fun. And I know JD can definitely speak to it. It's never great to tell somebody that they don't have a job anymore. I think as far as letting somebody go, not letting things get to me personally, working in human resources, I do have, that employee personal connection, but I also have that employer in mind. I have to make sure that I am supporting this employee, but I'm also supporting my employer, as I am there for the company's organization and I'm there for the employee's organization. So I'm kind of always on that tandem of, I have to make sure I'm supporting the business and the people. I always like to joke that I work for the candidate and for the hiring manager, and everybody else, not my problem. But really, whenever I have to let a candidate know that we're not proceeding with them, that is always very tough, especially when I'm not able, per my employer, to offer any advice for them in the future. So that is very difficult when I have to let somebody know that I've built this connection with, I've built this bond with. We've been talking for, however long now. We've had X, Y, and Z interviews, and unfortunately they weren't selected for the position. That is very difficult, but I always try to remain respectful and honest and be clear and concise and not say, oh, well, we just went with another person that just checked all of our boxes. I want to be honest with them and say, you weren't selected for the position. I do appreciate your time that you took for interviewing with us. We appreciate, you know, listening to you and getting to know you better. And we would like to see you succeed, if not here in the future, somewhere in the future. We always keep applications on file for 2 years. So if something, you know, in the next 2 years aligns with what you're doing, reach back out to me. If I notice that I have a position and you remain stuck in my forefront of my brain and I can't get rid of you, I actually just had somebody who I reached out to today that I talked with her at the beginning of the pandemic. And I didn't have any corporate compliance positions open. And I actually just had one open and I reached out back to her. I was like, hey, you remember me? And she's like, I do. And I was like, I got a job for you. So it's always nice to build those connections.
Sweet. Thank you.
I don't really have much experience hiring or firing in my position, since I do a lot more of the technical work for my field. But for separating emotions from getting stuff done, you have to work with a lot of different people in a lot of different capacities, and you have to call up maybe suppliers over the phone, or work with numerous people in departments that you probably never see the face of ever otherwise. And sometimes people are not the easiest to work with, but because of the product and because of the schedules that have to be done, you have to kind of sort of become level-headed and kind of work through things with them and kind of compromise a little bit and make sure that even if you don't agree or you aren't as amicable to the person as you normally would be, you have to remember that you still have to get this done no matter what, and try to find just some kind of base and work through everything and separate yourself from the person and think more about the product occasionally.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much to you three. Would any of our guests like to submit a question or ask a question? If you like, please, you know, turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your faces. Yes, please, Christopher.
Oh, again, yeah, for Jimmie. I think it could be like safe to say, right, that right now in your current job, it's a lot less stressful than compared to your timing working towards your degree. Would you say was all that dedication worth it? And basically, how much are you using now compared to what you used? I mean, what you learned in university. Sorry. So, like, what percentage of that are you actually using in your day-to-day job?
That's a good question.
It depends quite a bit on the courses you take and where you end up, I'd say. I think a lot of what I've learned in college compared to what I do now is sort of the basis for all the tools we use. So having that core foundation helps kind of build upon like what you need to know, because a lot of what I do now, like math-wise stuff, is done by software. So, and we just kind of utilize the software, but you have to make sure you use the software correctly, because you a lot of different inputs and you have to make sure you get the right output. And that way we don't really do the math or the science behind it too much, unless you're developing that code, and then you do. So depending on what you are doing, like there's some guys in my department who develop the code that we use to solve problems, and they are like, they need their PhDs in like engineering to kind of know the background for that kind of stuff. But where I'm at, I just use the tools more. So I say, I would guess maybe 20% of what I've done, because a lot of classes I take too aren't really applicable to my one specific field. So like, I don't really use too much chemistry in my structural analysis, but it's good to know it and that kind of thing. But once I got later in my field, and like when I was doing my master's degree, all those courses were much more focused on what I actually do. Even though I still don't really use that theory in the math too much, it was a lot more related to what I'm actually doing in my job.
Sweet. Thank you, Jimmie. So just to close out our show, I do have one last question for you three is what techniques have you found useful that you've utilized to hone down your impulses to achieve your desires?
I think definitely having a great supervisor that I can connect with, and her and I can really talk, and I can utilize her because she has immense years of experience in the field, and that I don't get afraid when my supervisor calls me. I get actually excited. I'm not like, oh, great, Lorraine's calling me. I'm like, oh my gosh, Lorraine's calling me. What do I get to learn now? So it's kind of like, not being afraid of that person in power, so to say, using them much more as a confidant and knowing that they're there to help you grow and that they are a great tool. And I know that Jimmie had said, going to somebody more senior, being able to use them and not being afraid to ask questions. So I think, just not going in thinking, oh, this is the way X, Y, and Z is to be. I'm not going to like my boss because my mom didn't like her boss. My dad didn't like his boss. Nobody likes their bosses. That's not true. I have a great boss. I love her.
That's sweet. How about you, Jimmie or JD? What techniques have you found useful to hone down your impulses to achieve your desires?
Honing down my impulses, maybe not quite as much. That's something that we work on every day till the day we die. One technique I've always used to increase my ability to continue doing what I do is realizing that every relationship matters. And there's a lot of entry level professionals that come across hospitality line of work, especially that I have direct contact with. Every relationship matters, meaning that whether they're 17 now, or 25 or 60 years old, don't count them out. Spend the time. They're not always going to work out, but spend the time to work with people to make them the chef or the professional that they want to be. And like I said, it's not always going to work out, and you're going to pour your heart and soul into someone, and then they move on to the next restaurant or the next thing. But just know that the time that you had them, that you had some really kick-ass food and good experience and things like that. But that's one technique that I've always used, is realizing that if you burn all your bridges, regardless of who they are, then you're going to have a hard time a little bit later when these people come back around, because they're not going anywhere, to find success in our business, especially. Because a lot of these people, they stay in the business. Dishwasher that I worked 10 years ago could be the best chef in Utica now. So that's just, every relationship matters, and hold on to them, and try to make the best out of what you have with who you have.
Awesome. Jimmie, would you like to add on that? As in, what's that voice in your head tell you that you don't get your desires? What is it?
I'll say, I did my master's part-time while fully employed, and that sucked so much. I hated doing it. So for kind of push through that and kind of keep going towards it, I really had to look at the goal ahead and just take every week in just short segments. All right, I have this assignment, I have to get it done. I do this one little thing, I do this next little thing, and eventually I'll get there. But just taking things at shorter blocks and 1 week at a time just kind of help stay on track a little bit, and looking ahead and trying to keep with that goal at the end of the tunnel. Just look smaller segments, all right, I have this assignment this week. All right, I could do that. I don't have to worry about my project at the end of the semester just yet, even though I guess finals are coming up soon for you guys. But I think just break it down into the smallest chunks you can that you can manage, and just go with that.
Beautiful. So I want to thank our three guests, Emily, JD, Jimmie. Thank you for being here with us and speaking to the region. It has been great, and we learned so much, and thank you. So to just close out our show, we are just going to host our last raffle. We have one more winner coming up. Winner, chicken dinner. All right. Liz, can we just spin that? Because with the last one, That way we could see the spin. Yeah. Hey, congratulations, Raquel. So you are a winner to a brand new t-shirt. So take your way to ptk.org, pick out your most amazing shirt that you would like to wear.